This is Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. Mitch Lafon.
Welcome to this episode of Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon, and joining me on the phone from Tesla, it is drummer Troy Luccketta, also good friend. Troy, when my daughter was born in 2003, him along with Frankie Bonelli, Kevin DeBrode, and they sent gifts from Troy. It was a little blue bear that had a I Love New York inscription on it, and we still have that, so that was very, very kind. And of course, last year, when the band was in town with Styx and Joan Jett, the band spent 3 days hanging out in Montreal, and Troy and I went out and saw George Thorogood together at Place des Arts in Montreal. And then the next night, I guess, June 2nd, that was July 1st, July 2nd, we went to the Foufoune Electrique, which means electric ass. Ooh, name of a bar, huh? To see Sebastian Bach, and let me tell you, it must have easily been 120 degrees in that venue. And then after that, we went over to across the street and had a extended lunch with Sebastian's band, or extended supper, I guess, with Sebastian's band, and Todd Zuckerman of Styx and stuff. Always a pleasure. So this is going to be my Tesla episode. Probably one of the most under-the-radar bands you will ever meet. You know, you think of Motley Crue and Bon Jovi and Def Leppard, and there's all kinds of stories, and there's controversy, and there's stuff going on. And then you might look at bands like Poison and Quiet Riot, and they're in the news for all kinds of stuff. And then Tesla just sort of slides right in there. No controversy, no big announcements, just day after day, year after year, that go-to band that you can absolutely love and trust, and it's just fantastic. So let's go over to @MitchLafon on Twitter, @MitchLafon on Twitter, and let's start sharing some Tesla stories. So for me, the first time I had any contact with Tesla was when Def Leppard, on June 12th, 1988, they announced a show for Montreal at the Forum on that day, and it says, opening up is Tesla. And I look around and I go, well, who the hell's that? So I start watching much music. I would say I listen to radio, but Montreal radio, then and now, awful. Especially Shom FM. Awful. Especially back in the day. I mean, Bon Jovi was big and Motley Crue was big, and they were too busy playing the Doobie Brothers. I mean, the hell with them. Anyway, forget Montreal radio. But I said, okay, I need to know who this band is, because I'm not going to go to a show and sit 45 minutes and not know what the heck it is. Now, of course, that was back then. Now I sit through bands and I have no idea what they're playing all the time. But I go out and I buy Mechanical Resonance, and I put it on, and you hear the opening notes of Easy Come, Easy Go, and you go, oh, something going on here, and then coming at you live, and then Getting Better, and you work your way down to Little Susie and Love Me and Before My Eyes, and you go, holy mackerel, perfection. Absolute perfection. So the show comes along on June 12th, 1988, at the Forum, and I am completely psyched out and prepared, and it was the greatest night of my life up until that point, with the exception of seeing Kiss in 1979 on the Dynasty Tour, and Kiss at the Palladium in 1980 with Eric Carr's first show. But okay, you get my point. Spectacular. So the band goes on, and the great radio controversy comes out, which we are celebrating 30 years this year. 30 years! I mean, that album is still like, hey, that's a new Tesla album. And it's been 30 years. Anyway, controversy comes out. Motley Crue puts Dr. Feelgood. And, well, guess what? They head out on tour together. And I'm like, oh, wow. And I have to say, at the time, I loved Motley Crue, and I thought, but, I was a kid, so having money for concert tickets, even though at the time, they were like $10, was still something. And then I saw Tesla's opening up for them, and I went, oh, man, yeah, I'm in. And so Tesla, with Motley Crue, at the Montreal Forum again, spectacular show. Absolutely spectacular show. And I'm like, yeah, this band is out of this world. One of the greatest bands you'll ever get, you know. I mean, I just don't think they've done anything bad yet. Even the new album, Shock, is great. So anyway, that was that. And then, of course, the grunge era hits and Nirvana, and, you know, it's all sort of puke-worthy. And I'm at McGill University in 94, 95, and I'm working on Masters of Educational Psychology. And we're on spring break, and I head over to San Diego just to get some heat. And guess what? February 21st, 1995, I'm in San Diego, and I'm looking through the local whatever, you know, daily happenings magazine, you know, the free magazines or the free newspapers that all the cities had back then. By the way, do those still exist? I don't think they still exist. Any of those free magazines anywhere, or free newspapers. Anyway, I see that Tesla is playing at a club called the New Bacchanal. And I'm like, you're kidding me. Off I go to the New Bacchanal. Now, here's the thing. I have seen Tesla at the Forum for Hysteria. I have seen Tesla at the Forum for the Dr. Feelgood tour. 20,000 screaming fans both nights. And I show up to the New Bacchanal in San Diego in 1995. And it is the tiniest of tiniest clubs. And it wasn't even sold out. And I'm standing literally face to face with Jeff Keith. And the band goes ahead and delivers this set list that included Bust a Nut songs, Solution, Need Your Lovin', Try So Hard, you know, and it was spectacular. But I'm looking at the stage and I'm going, hey, wait a minute. Aren't there 5 guys in Tesla? Why am I only counting 4? Now, you have to remember, in 1995, there was no... Well, there was some sort of internet, but not like it is today. So it was like, well, where's the other guy? What happened to Tommy? There's no Tommy. So I got to see Tesla in this tiny, tiny club as a 4-piece. Now, mind you, it was moving and it was great, and I have a great memory of it. But they were 4. So I end up going back to the hotel, and eventually I go back to Montreal, and I'm trying to figure out, why was Tesla only 4? And I'm searching and I'm trying and I'm using web crawler and what was it? What was that? Netscape? What was that called? Explorer? No, it wasn't Explorer. What was that called? Navigator? Netscape Navigator and Lycos and web crawler and all those great web search engines from back in the day. And I can't find any information. And of course, eventually, it might have been in Hit Parade or Metal Edge, it comes out, oh, the band moved forward. Tommy Skeoch was sick. And of course, back then, there was a lot of PR stuff done in the media. So you would cover up, went to rehab. You would cover up, has a drug problem. So I was like, oh, Tommy's sick. Well, that's not good. When is Tommy going to get better? And then, of course, the band after that sort of just disappeared or disintegrated. Jeff Keith goes off and does Bar 7, which, by the way, if you haven't heard that Bar 7 album, go find it. It is a great, great album. Anyway, eventually, years later, we find out that it was drug related and he had to go to rehab, and the band where everybody was miserable. And anyway, fast forward to 2019, we've got Dave Root in the band. The band sounds great. They're still just sliding in under the radar. You're like, oh wait, they're here with Def Leppard for 12 dates? Well, okay then. They just sort of show up, and then they put on a great show, and it's spectacular. Anyway, so let us get over to my chat with Troy. We talk about some of that, and yes, we do talk about Tommy and how he feels about Tommy not being there and so on and so forth. But we also go through the different anniversaries, because in 1989, Great Radio Controversy came out, or The Great Radio Controversy came out, 30 years. And then in 1994, Bust a Nut came out. Well, 25 years. And then in 2004, Into the Now came out. 15 years. And 5 years ago, Simplicity came out. So it is a year of anniversaries for Tesla. And so we talk about those different albums. And I have this perception, perhaps wrongly, that Bust a Nut is sort of looked frowned upon by the band. Now that's my perception. So please, don't describe that to the band. I get a feeling because you don't see a lot of those songs show up in set lists, and when you talk about interviews and stuff, Mechanical Resonance comes up, and Great Radio Controversy comes up, and this and that, and Bust a Nut seems to be one of those. But when you talk to Tesla fans, tried and true, pure Tesla fans, they love that album. And if you haven't had a chance to check out sort of the Japanese version that has the bonus track being Led Zeppelin's The Ocean, you should, because that band can cover Led Zeppelin like no other. So you should check that out. And anyway, while we are checking stuff out, let's do the gratuitous plugs. Check me out on Twitter at Mitch Lafon. Check out the Facebook page. There's my personal one is Mitch Lafon, and then there's Rock Talk Mitch Lafon. Wasn't enough room to include the with. And then, of course, loudtracks.com, loudtracks, Trax.com, your global merchandiser, official merch from Anthrax and Iron Maiden and Marilyn Manson and Judas Priest and all those others. And, official Mitch merch. You can get a Mitch baseball jersey, or raglan as they call it, and the classic black tee with the design, and I know you've heard this 100 times, done by Claudio Bergaman, who did Judas Priest's Firepower cover. So pick up a tee, support the show, and with that, here is the one, the only, incredible drummer and true friend, Troy Luccketta. We are speaking with Tesla drummer Troy Luccketta. The new album, of course, is Shock. Troy, always a pleasure to talk to you.
Well, thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk to you as well, Mitch.
Yeah, and it's going to be a great summer for us Canadian fans, because you are doing, a dozen shows with. In fact, you're essentially taking an entire month of July in Canada, going from Halifax over to Calgary, with stops in Montreal and Ottawa and Quebec City. Talk to me a little bit about that tour, because if we look back, this has now been 32 years of sharing bills with Def Leppard. Last time I think you were here with Def Leppard, it was with REO Speedwagon, and then you came back with Styx last year. But talk to me about being on the road with Def Leppard, and what has the band meant to you, and why does this pairing work for 32 years?
Well, it started, back in 87, 88, we did the Hysteria tour. That was about a year and a half deal, all the U.S., Canada, and the States. So that was a nice long run, which kind of, gave us a real leg up on things, so to speak. I mean, because it was, obviously Hysteria was so huge, everything was sold out. And then, 15, 16, 17, we went out with them in the States. We got over to Canada for a few shows here and there. And, I figured, I was really surprised that we would end up back doing Canada with them, which we're so excited to be doing, of course. And I guess, since we haven't done Canada, a real proper tour through Canada, quite some time, I mean, there's no better way to do it than with Def Leppard. And the fact that they would, take us out with them is just phenomenal. It's great. We're just very blessed. They've been, we have relationships and friendships, but bottom line, it's the business, it's got to work. and it has worked. And I think that's maybe why they brought us back, you know.
It really is. So I don't think we've ever explored this, but how did you get to be on the Hysteria tour? Because, you know, the band had done Pyromania. There was a 4-year wait. There was a big excitement about Def Leppard coming back. And, of course, it was as huge as everybody predicted. But Tesla, on the other hand, you were rookies. Nobody really knew who you were. So how did sort of the rookie band meet up with the band that was, and pardon the pun, but in full hysteria, you know, where fans just really wanted? Was that just a manager? Was it a personal thing? Was it random luck? How did you get on that tour?
It was kind of a combination of things. I mean, with all the planets lining up, so to speak, it started, Tesla was doing our own headlining tour in Europe, and Rick Allen and Steve Clark and Phil Collen came out and hung out with us. I forget where it was, in Amsterdam. Is there a club called the Paradiso or something like that?
There is.
In Amsterdam.
There's some great bootlegs from the Paradiso of different bands floating around over the years.
So it was that club. They had come down. That's the first time we met them, you know. We shared the same management, and the next thing I know, you know, I think it just went so well that we all hit it off so well together that, you know, they invited us onto the tour. And being we were under the same management company, obviously that made sense, you know. And that just kind of kicked it off, you know.
And it's been going on for 32 years. So then, just talk to me about, and then we'll get on to Shock, but in a minute here. But you're this rookie band, and when you're opening up for a major headliner, you know that we hear the stories. They cut the lights, they cut the stage, they cut the set times, they do this, they do all this nonsense, and the fact that you're still doing this for 32 years or 32 years later with the shows to me that they must have treated you nice. Because had they been, well, how can I say this without a swear word? Had they been not nice, let's just put it that way, I doubt you would have come back for more.
They've never not been nice. They've always treated us, you know, really amazing, and you know, they've always given us a lot of room on the stage. When we did the Hysteria tour, you got to remember that was in the round. We had a full stage. We were the first ones to play that stage live, you know, and because we were the opening band. So, but I mean, we had full use of that in the round stage and our own little setup. You know, it was very, very cool. And over the years, you know, every time we've worked with them, they've always given us a lot of real estate, so to speak. And when we come through, you know, Canada, you know, in July and part of August, you know, you'll see it's just the two bands, so we're going to get an hour. So that's going to be nice. And we got a little small production with us, you know. We carry a little video, and they're always good with the lighting. And yeah, man, it's been just very family oriented, you know, over the years, and it's just stuck, you know.
Which is great. So let us get on then to Shock, because the Def Leppard connection continues. Phil Collen produces it. Talk to me about having him produce it, because Phil is, you know, and I don't mean this to be disparaging, but he's the guitarist in Def Leppard. He's not a producer like a Rick Rubin or a Bob Ezrin. Or talk to me about having him come in, and why was that sort of refreshing to have a musician's perspective rather than sort of a producer's perspective?
Well, first of all, I think he definitely wore the producer hat very, very well. The thing about Phil is, you know, he has all those Mutt Lange years behind him. He understands how that works. He understands how songs work, melody, you know, not wasting, you know, arrangements. And he brought all that to the table with co-writing the record with the band. I mean, we just, when we had a conversation, we had a conference call with him, and he was into doing this. And I'm not even sure whose idea it was. But nevertheless, I mean, he took on a huge responsibility. There's a lot of work making a Tesla record, and we had to write the record and put the record together, and and on all his breaks, he was spending all that time, his personal time. I mean, he lived and ate this thing and breathed it, for a better part of a year and a half, while we were on the road and it was developing and coming together. Because we were touring at the same time, all of us, and then we had to squeeze in the schedule to get the record done. But he's just somebody that really got the band. I felt, he really was a fan of the group and felt that he could make a great record with us. And for us, it was just trusting in his ability and the respect level being so high that we could let go, knowing Tesla, we know who we are as a group. So it's easy to let go and say, hey, man, make the record you want to make with the band. It wasn't, so much about even us, even though it was, but it was really about letting go and giving him, full control over the vision of what this record was going to be. And we did. And that's what you have as a byproduct of Phil Collen, for sure. Obviously with our input in there as well, but I mean, we really let go and let him make the record that he wanted to make, and we felt that there was a lot of good songs that had come together. And I don't know how much, Phil has done in production work, but this record for us has been, pretty exciting moment, the fact that, and the successes it's had. I mean, we've really gotten a lot of good feedback from it.
You really have, actually. Talk to me, though, about the drum sound, because as a longtime fan, I find that the drum sound on this one is different to the other albums, and I don't mean that in a negative way at all, but it is what's the word for it? Maybe a more modern sounding drum sound. Talk to me about some of the challenges that Phil brought to the table and saying to you, hey, maybe try a different approach. Or how was it for you recording this? And do you agree with me? Is the drum sound different? Because that's how I perceive it.
Let me tell you about how it went down. The band pretty much had worked up a model of the songs. They didn't have lyrics, and some of them might have had some melodies and some ideas. And it was time for me to record drums. It was just Phil, myself, and an engineer. And he said to me, Troy, I want to be able to just, air drum the record. So basically what he's saying is, let's not get fancy. Just give me, hooky parts and things. So I made sure not to listen to the demos, even if there was a beat programmed. I never sat down and played and worked on any of the songs until I sat down and recorded it. So we went in on day one, and I said the night before, I go, what 3 songs are we going to do tomorrow? Because we would do 3 a day. He goes, well, these 3. So I'd pull them up, and I'd get in the morning, and I'd do some charts on them, quick cheat sheets on them. And then I would hammer away for an hour before he got there, just getting some of the grooves together, and then we would walk through it. And it was pretty painless getting all the songs recorded. It was only like 3.5 days and we were done. So that was cool. That went fairly easy. As far as when the record got finished and got mixed and hearing, I would think a modern sound is a good way to put it. And with the production, I knew things would be different. Ronan, who mixes the band live and did their last record, he mixed our record. So, there was some different things happening. Sonically, not quite as rough and raw as you would hear the drums, so they might even sound a little more produced. So, yeah, that's fair. You know what I mean? But I'm cool with it. I like it. It's really good.
It is. It's a great album. So moving forward, and because my next question after this is about moving backwards, but moving forward, do you see yourself working with Phil again, or do you get to a point where Tesla wants to self-produce, or do you look down and say, hey, you know what? Maybe it is time for us to get a Rick Rubin or, a producer of that kind of ilk?
Well, I don't, first of all, I definitely don't see us self-producing a record. I don't think it's in our best interest knowing the dynamics of the group. I think it's better to have somebody at the helm that we can respect and listen to and take direction from. I don't know that there's another need to do another record. Not that we wouldn't do another record, but it's kind of like, well, we've already done this record. It's like, what would be the next step, if we were to do something different? Would we step back in? I think if we did go back in with Phil, it would probably be done a little differently, and there might be some growth, and we might be able to hit more on some other areas that we didn't hit on, maybe, but it's not that we wouldn't do it. I don't think. I think it was very pleasant. Everybody enjoyed the process for the most part. But, when you talk about Rick Rubin or guys like that, anything's possible, right?
Of course. Now you just mentioned that, or maybe I heard it wrong, that there doesn't really need to have a need to make another new album. Is that just based on?
I didn't say no.
Okay.
I didn't say there's not a need to make another new album. I'm saying what I said was, I don't know if there's a need to make another new record with Phil if we're going to do part 2. You know what I mean?
All right. Gotcha.
In other words, we already did Shock, that record. So if we were going to do something a little different, it wasn't going to come out sounding like Shock and be another Def Leppard record. You know what I'm saying? Like Def Leppard makes records, and does that make sense?
Right. That makes sense. Okay.
In any way.
No. That makes sense.
I think it's just, just the fact that, we've been there and done it. Do we want to do that again? Well, if we did, then we would probably maybe talk about it and maybe address it differently. I don't know.
Gotcha. And by the way, I have to approve of the fact that you said that you wouldn't self-produce. And I know folks have heard me say this on my show before, I really don't like when bands self-produce, because I really think that you need outside ears sometimes to say, hey, that's not working, that sounds great, you should run with this. And I think sometimes when you're too close to the project, you don't have that perspective, right? I mean, does that make sense?
Well, yes, absolutely. And Tesla is not a band that we've done some of that over the years. And we've definitely, seen some great sides of being really, really involved, for sure. But at this late in the game, we definitely don't need to be self-producing ourselves, and we need a coach in there. You know what I'm saying? We need a referee and a coach.
You do. And I agree fully with that. And I think all bands need that. All right. So now I mentioned we were going to step back for a second. So let's step back. 2019 has four Tesla anniversaries. 30 years of the Great Radio Controversy. 25 years of Bust a Nut. 15 years of Into the Now, and 5 years of Simplicity. So let me just quickly go back to the Great Radio Controversy. You do the tour with Def Leppard. Folks love Mechanical Resonance. Modern Day Cowboy is played all over Much Music in Canada, all over MTV. Great heat on the band. How much pressure was on you on that second record? Because had you gone in and done a dud, we might not be talking today. So you came through with the material, the production team here, Steve Thompson and Michael Barbiero, polished it and helped it out. What was that like going into that album? And then also we'll finish after that with 30 years. I mean, looking back on that. But How important was the great radio controversy to your overall career?
Well, I mean, it was huge because that record, we had Love Song on there. So that was our first top 10, commercially accepted song for radio that, really opened up some doors for us, which was a song, by the way, nobody wanted on the record. The producers didn't want it. The management didn't want it. And neither did our A&R guy, The only people that wanted on the record was the band. We were like, no. They're like, no, it's three good parts. It's three parts of a song. It's not even a song there. We would say, we're like, well, it wasn't your formulated, classic written song. That's all. But anyway, the fact that we never put pressures on ourselves going back, thinking about the success of the first record going into the second record. We've always been a band just to do what we do. There's never been anything pretentious about what we've done over the years. We just write and play from the heart. Those were songs we wrote. We had quite a few songs to choose from. Yeah, the production might have changed a little bit, but nevertheless, there's some good tracks on that record. We had Heaven's Trail on there. That was I really liked the video for that. I thought that was cool.
Yesterday's Gone. I mean, you got to bring Yesterday's Gone back to the set list. Hopefully in Montreal, Ottawa, or Quebec. It's a tough one.
I would agree with you, man. I've always championed that song on. And all the other anniversaries you mentioned, I really didn't think about those. But 3 years later, man, it's cool. It's great, man. I mean, it's a trip. I mean, when you think about just the longevity and what's happened and what we've been doing and how things have worked out, it is pretty amazing. In such a tough business,
Yeah, it's amazing Well, I was gonna take up on that. It's amazing because when you look back at the era, we make a lot of noise about Motley Crue. We make a lot of noise about Bon Jovi and Def Leppard, and Tesla sort of. It's almost like you slid through the cracks, but yet you've had a music career, and there has been millions of musicians over the years, but only a very select few have careers, and so it's incredible that you've managed to do it, managed to stay almost intact, 4/5, which is very respectable. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me go to the next anniversary because I want to do sort of the anniversary roundup here, but I'm going to skip Bust a Nut for a second and go into the now. It's been 10 years from Bust a Nut. The band had been, well, I guess broken up for the lack of a better word. Talk to me about getting into that one and looking back on it, because I always loved that record. I thought it was absolutely perfect. I loved every song on there. I thought the performances were credible. I thought the songs were credible. I thought, and maybe credible is not a strong enough word. I loved it. But again, speaking about pressure, what was that like going into there? You could have just gotten back together and gone and done some tours and got on, opening up for Def Leppard or whatever. But you made a new record. What was that like, that moment of, okay, we're here, we're doing this, we're starting up the machine again, let's go?
I remember in rehearsal in Pollock Pines, where Frank lived at the time, and we were rehearsing in his warehouse. And I remember, I'll never forget us going in there. And I remember Jeff. Jeff is such a unique guy. He really is. And I can say that after being around him as long as I've been with him. And I remember him being emotional, man. He just kind of was like, I mean, you got to remember, at that time, music had changed so much. He was like, he was kind of like pretty depressed. Like, man, I don't even know if I could do this. I don't even know if I can try to compete with what they're doing out there today, this, and that. And I remember all of us just saying, hey, man, we're just going to do what we do. We'll put a modern twist to it a little bit. And we were experimenting, as you know. And that record pretty much was self-produced, by the way. And I love that record, by the way. I think it's a great record. But yeah, man, it took a little while for us to get our legs. We were going through a lot of stuff and ideas and songs, and you know, that one particular song, Into the Now, I actually brought that to the band. That's my song that I wrote, not the lyrics. Jeff wrote all the lyrics, but you know, I wrote the music on that from top to bottom, and I think we added the new chorus or something that Frank wrote. But I had that song completely finished because I wanted to write something heavy, you know. And it was exciting to me that because it almost got lost in the shuffle. Everybody was pitching for songs, I remember. And I remember showing everybody the idea. And normally we'll just come in, I'll let the band take it, and it'll be a band, collaboration kind of thing. And it just went over everybody's heads, and I was like, man, this is too good. I'm not going to let this one get, and the timing was poor when I was showing it to the band, because everybody else had all their songs they were showing everybody. So it just got lost. So I demoed it up myself, and then Tommy got a hold of it, and he goes, man, I really like this. And then Jeff started writing lyrics for it. The next thing I know, man, it came together. But that whole process was a lot of work, hard work, and we really worked hard and really well together, on putting that record together. It was definitely a labor of love, man. And we definitely wanted to make a statement, for sure in the modern world, and we did. I thought it was just equally balanced with where we needed to be at that time.
What was it for you personally going, hey man, I'm back in the band. We are a band again, because it had been a decade. You can't lose sight of it. It was a decade. It wasn't a year. It was a decade. What was it like to be in the studio and go, we're back. This is Tesla. I'm home, right? I mean, Tesla's home.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good. I mean, I didn't realize until we what happened. It was we broke up in early '96. In October of 2000, Pat Martin, this radio DJ out of Sacramento, and this guy Curtis Johnson, the program director, they had called everybody in the band and wanted Tesla to play their 1-year anniversary show. It was Rocktoberfest, and I really hadn't. At that time, they caught me on a day where I was like, I don't think so, because I hadn't even talked to the guys, And then they called me back, go, hey, everybody's agreed to do it. I said, well, absolutely, man. I'd be happy to do it. And we were only going to do the one show. But I remember sitting there and revisiting the catalog, because we're putting the set together and we're just listing everything. And I remember sitting in the control room and listening through all the songs going, because I never listened to our music, I just play, record it, and split and be done. It's over, kind of thing, because you're playing the show every night, So, anyway, but hearing all those songs and the catalog that we had created, it was kind of an awakening for me, and a new awareness of just like how great the band was. I mean, there was a lot of great songs, and I was very excited to come back into it. And, and it just after the first show, they wanted to put on a couple weeks of theaters, and then those sold out, and we just kept adding dates, and everything sold out that year, pretty much all theaters. It was a good reunion. And here we are. Now it's freaking coming on 2020, almost 20 years later. It's crazy.
I know. It's incredible in here. And I'll finish on this one today, because this one strikes me. 25 years since Bust a Nut. I mean, to me, that's still, when I play it or when I think about it, it's still, to me, the new Tesla album. And it's like, well, it's been 25 years that it's been new there, Mitch. That one must have been somewhat bittersweet, because musically you look at Shine Away and Solution and Mama's Fool. You've got these great songs. There's some blues rock going on there, but also it was a tough marketplace. It was hard to get noticed. You were running up against the Nirvanas and Soundgardens of the world. And then eventually it ends up being the last album for 10 years. Talk to me a little bit about Bust a Nut, and how do you look back on it 25 years later?
That was a very difficult record to make. The band was not in good shape. Terry Thomas, the producer, God bless him, man. We put that guy through hell just trying to show up to the studio. Back in the day, I mean, we would make records with a schedule that would start at noon and go till 3 or 4 in the morning, and then start at noon and go, and then people would be 3 hours late, and there was just, a lot of,
drama, just drama.
I just remember Jeff not being in a good spot, and I just remember it being a real difficult record, pulling teeth, man, to get that thing done. And there are some moments on it for sure. But that's kind of, that's where it takes me back to, I remember with Terry that, I just remember him being super challenged, and keeping it together, and making sure that we could get the record done.
So then is Bust a Nut mostly a negative memory for band members, that it just, are you surprised it actually got made?
I think maybe that could be part of it. But I don't know that it was so much negative. I just think there was just not a lot of respect going on for people's time, and I just remember a lot of dead time in the studio and lack of productive. I mean, and then, it took everything Terry and Jeff had just to get the lyrics written, I remember, and finishing up. And it was just a tough record, man. But there were some moments on that record, I think, It's funny. I hear a lot of people come up to me and go, they love that record, And for me, yeah, it's just kind of like I kind of forget about that one. I'll be honest with you. But you're right, man. You mentioned Mama's Fool, and
Mama's Fool's
like,
great.
Wow, yeah, there was.
Try So Hard,
fun.
Shine Away. Shine Away is brilliant.
Yeah.
And I'll give you the fan perspective on it. Is what I remember the most about Bust a Nut is that there wasn't a lot of competition in the genre around then. So, in 86, 87, there was a new Motley Crue and a new Tesla and a new Def Leppard and a new Bon Jovi, new Aerosmith. You always had something new every other month, and, you got oversaturated. But in 94, it's like, oh my God, Tesla put out an album. Yay, one of the bands I like. And so I think, and maybe fans are like me, they might have just held on to it and spun it and gone, well, there's no new Motley Crue. Well, there's no new whatever. Let's just... And I listened to it over and over and over and over and over again, and there's some great stuff on there. It might be time for the band to revisit it and maybe pull out one of the gems from that one and surprise the folks at a show, because it's great. It's a great album. Can you believe, though, it's 25 years, though? 25 years.
Yeah, that's just it blows my mind, man.
It really does. And I'll ask you this real quick. I've been following Tommy on his Facebook. He's been putting out some videos, and he seems to be in a better place. Has the band and him had any not about reunions, we're not talking about that, but are you back to being sort of, buddies and friends, or is there still sort of a little bit of a wedge between the two camps?
Yeah, there's definitely no wedge here with me and Tommy. I don't know if Frank has talked to him. I know Brian hasn't, but I know Jeff talks to him. I mean, there's nothing. I've nothing but love for the guy and wish him well, man. I actually seen him a couple years back, and I enjoyed it. We had a nice visit, and I didn't bring it up to the band. This was the first time, it'll get out there. But, at the time I didn't feel the need to do that, but I've just, I've always wished everybody well. And, Tommy was a huge part of the sound of this band, man. I mean, you take the first 10 years and everything that we created of who we are, it's with Tommy, and you can't ignore that, and I wouldn't want to ignore that. And he deserves credit for that. I mean, him and Frank were the dynamic duo. Everybody knew that. Don't get me wrong. Love Dave, and he does a great job, and, he's the replacement for Tommy. And, and he's been hugely accepted, from our fans and from all of us in the band, and and he's been such a dream and a pleasure to work with, But I just believe in being fair, and so I mean, nobody ever asks about Tommy in interviews. So yeah, man, it's all good, man, and I'm glad to hear that maybe he's out playing and doing some things. I'm not sure what he's doing. I don't follow him around, so I don't really know what he's up to. But if he's out working and playing, good for him,
Yeah, well, for those who might not have known, and maybe on his Facebook, he's been putting up videos of him in the studio recording a new album, and some of the guitar solos he's laying down are just spectacular. So, folks, support Tommy, support Tesla, of course, and do go out and pick up Shock and get a ticket to see them with Def Leppard or wherever. Always a pleasure, Monsieur Troy. Whoops, I just hit the mute button.
Well, thank you, man.
I hit the mute button by mistake. But always a pleasure, and looking forward to the Canadian dates, and as we say here, merci.
There you go, man.
Yeah.
Back at you, my friend, and much love. Appreciate you.
Thank you, and we will see you soon, and just keep going. The new album Shock is terrific, and I do encourage everybody to pick up the CD version of it or a physical product, vinyl or whatever, because you need to hold it and smell it and touch it and read the credits. That's what an album experience is supposed to be. And but hey, there you go. Merci, monsieur. Thank you.
All right, man. God bless. Thank you.
You're listening to Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. Rock Talk.